crimson jerseys, crimson helmets, and white trousers go against Penn State. Here it is, and here's the kick. It's a long, deep kick. Ogilvy waiting for it at the 3-yard line. Has it up to the 5, to the 10, to the near sideline, to the 15, to the 20. He's out of bounds at the 21-yard line. Rutledge now with a second down 4. Bluffs up the middle, is back to throw. The rush is on. Look out. He looks. He throws into the end zone. 4 minutes and 49 seconds of playing time. Usina with a snap. Back 3, 4, 5 steps. Throws into the end zone. Oh, no. It's a touchdown. It's a touchdown. Scott Pinsky made the catch, and he's got the touchdown. 30 seconds remaining in the third quarter. Here is Rutledge now with the snap. Almost caught. Breaking to the left-hand side. Pinsky out. Wide to the left goes. Gets him over the lead. He goes in. Touchdown. Alabama. Right now, Penn State has a second down goal to go from the Alabama 6-yard line. It's coming. Here's the snap, and Jusino rolling to the right. Looks. He throws at the goal line. He is hit at the 1-yard line and driven out of bounds. Was hit by Don McNeil and driven out just short of scoring the touchdown. Here comes Menendez lands up to the line of scrimmage, and Justina has him again in the strong eye formation, a tight formation. Takes the snap, gives it out. Mike Gilman is hit and thrown back. He did not get in. Penn State did not score. Alabama has taken over.
The success of University of Alabama football teams in the 1960s further enhanced the school's reputation as one of the nation's elite programs. Coach Paul Bryant had led 4 Crimson Tide squads to national titles since taking over in 1958. As the middle part of the decade approached, blue-chip athletes from across the country were lining up to play for the Bear. But the coach and his staff weren't looking for those with athletic talent alone. Players who achieved greatness at the University of Alabama had that special something that allowed Bryant to mold them into men who'd never quit when things got tough. When Bryant saw that kind of potential, he went after it. And in the mid-70s, he saw it in Pompano Beach, Florida, a rural community just north of Miami, hometown of Barry Krause.
It used to be a farm community. And that's what everybody used to call it. You call it bean pickers.
We had a farmer's market. And my mom and dad used to go and get fresh vegetables there. And my parents moved there in '55.
You know, parents knew parents. You know, if you did something wrong, it got back to somebody. You know, people looked out for each other. You know, like, you know, if I did something wrong and Mr. and Mrs. Krause knew about it, they would take care of it and then let my parents know that they took care of it. It's a small town, good America.
My dad spent a lot of time with us. We used to go to the air shows together. We'd go to Cocoa Beach, Florida, go up there and watch the space shots, all the, you know, Saturn V's, and we got to see like John Glenn in a parade and things like that. So we did a lot of stuff together.
Every kid's dream to have parents like Barry's parents were. I mean, they never missed a game. His older brother was super supportive. Eric was much younger, but even as a small child, knew everything about when Barry went to Alabama, knew everything about the high school players.
Eric came along, which is my younger brother, 10 years later. Kind of a surprise to all of us, but I usually always had hand-me-downs from my brother. Everything he wore, I ended up with. But Bobby and I always wanted to be like Bobby because he was my big brother.
I don't think there was enough food on the table when I came around to eat because of Bobby and Barry, but between the two of them, always big-time competition. Barry was always Bobby's little brother.
You know, my brother used to think that I was a punching bag. So, I mean, he periodically would, you know, just kind of beat me up all the time. I know that the house itself, I think every wall in the house had to be fixed.
Barry was aggressive from the get-go. In basketball, I mean, he's a football player on a basketball court. And baseball, you know, catcher, you know, same way. I mean, he was aggressive.
He was always a hard worker, and he played hard, but it was always like he was out of position. He was the big guy that was a little bit clumsy, but he was always the guy that you wanted on your side because he always worked the hardest and ran the hardest, and he wasn't going to let you beat him.
I used to be a quarterback on South Pompano until this one play where I actually called a sweep right, and everybody went right except for me. I had forgotten the play and went left, and a guy named Clarence Jones, to this day, you know, I ran into him about 10 years ago, and he goes, yeah, he goes, I remember you. He says, I broke your arm. Because what he did was he took me and slammed me to the ground and broke my arm. And I just remember that I rode my bicycle home, and it was like 3 or 4 mile ride, and cried all the way home because I had a broken arm. And from that point on, I really kind of felt like I didn't want to take it anymore. I wanted to give it. So that's why I decided to go and play defense.
Krause soon found a home in places where aggressive behavior was rewarded. His dreams of football glory were nurtured at Pompano Beach High School, where fall Friday nights belonged exclusively to the hometown Tornadoes.
At this school here, we would pack that stadium. It would be packed. And we'd walk out through this one gate. We had to come out and go through the gate on this side of the field. And our bench was on the other side of the field, and the fans would just be lined up there. I mean, you walked out about this high off the ground. Everybody did.
Everything was about football, and you know, the dream of playing for the Dolphins was great. But then all of a sudden, this thing called Alabama kind of came into my life, and I followed the team a little bit more and followed Coach Bryant, and, you know, winningest coach ever. And then I met a guy in high school. His name was Eddie Blankenship, and Eddie was from actually L.A., which was lower Alabama. And then Eddie actually introduced me to the Wishbone.
He saw himself as the Wishbone quarterback of the year, and he was. He was a talented athlete. It's not just like he's a linebacker. I mean, you know, he ran it pretty good. I mean, he had some little moves and stuff, and you know, he ran it like a 180-pound speedster.
On weekends, we'd go down to the beach, and everything that we did down there was to show off for the girls. So we used to run the wishbone against the waves. The waves would come in about 2-3 feet high, and we'd wait for the wave. Again, it would hit on an angle, so it would give us time to run the option down. So, you know, as soon as the quarterback would snap, and we'd all fake into the line of scrimmage, boom, get hit by the wave, and quarterback would option down, and he'd get, just as he gets hit, he pitches the ball, and then the pitch man would get the ball and catch the ball, and then go up over the waves, and just, you know, it was just awesome.
You played touch in the sand and tackle in the water, and you definitely made sure Barry wasn't close to you when your feet hit the water.
Unfortunately, it didn't work for the girls. You know, you look over at them, they said, man, we just ran a great option, and they wouldn't even be looking at us.
Off the field, Barry enjoyed life. He had fun. On the field, very intent. I mean, very intent, he was vicious, hard-hitting. He was our defense. Our defense, Coach Vanover built his defense around Barry, and Barry was the stud on defense. In practice, we used to have to send 2 and 3 guys at him to block him because we couldn't handle him otherwise.
I played defensive back, and if someone ran a sweep, if you weren't up real quick, you weren't making the tackle because Barry was over there. You know, you didn't cover anybody on a slant because they were going in linebacker territory. You just didn't have to worry about it.
At high school, he was just a natural team leader. He always talks about give it all, don't quit, don't walk on the field. That bled over to the other players. I mean, if you got the star of your football team and somebody's loafing and he's yelling across the field for you to pick it up and get it going, I mean, it just makes everybody. So he was a spark plug. He was the catalyst of the team.
I liked to make the big play. And so we had a couple stunts set up so that I could actually just shoot gaps and make plays behind the line of scrimmage. But no, I just loved to hit people, and it was a lot of fun rather than taking it, like I said earlier in my years. I loved to hit, and if I wasn't the leading tackler, I'd be upset.
Recruiters from around the country soon found their way to South Florida, hoping to secure the services of the hard-hitting linebacker from Pompano Beach. Letters and phone calls poured in, but only one school captured Krause's full attention.
He was heavily recruited. I mean, he could have probably went to any college that he wanted to. You know, it's kind of funny because that's back when the letters from the colleges came into the athletic department, so you know, I'd get a couple from Mars Hill or some of these small schools, and Barry's getting them from Notre Dame and Michigan and Alabama. But we were all proud for him, so that was just awesome.
I got recruited by Miami, and they said, "Hey, Barry, you know, we'd like you to come to one of our games." And And I actually went to the University of Miami and watched the game really for the wrong reasons because Alabama was playing Miami. And so I went out there and watched them play, and Alabama killed them. And I'm like, oh, they were so cool. You see Coach Bryant walking with his houndstooth hat on, just the Crimson Tide. It was just really cool.
I don't know what the connection was, if he was destined to play at Alabama, wanted to play at Alabama, but I know another SEC school here was trying for him, and he wouldn't have nothing to do with him.
I finally got a call from Alabama, and it was a guy named Kenny Martin, and he was recruiting me, along with a guy named Lewis Campbell. And they said, you know, we'd like you to come up. It was kind of the latter part of the recruiting season. I kind of figured that they had one extra scholarship, and they said, all right, we'll give it to Barry Krause. So I couldn't wait. I really couldn't wait. What I remember was going over into the locker room at Alabama and just looking around, and I remember there was a great linebacker named Woodrow Lowe, and he was from Phoenix City, Alabama. But I remember standing in front of his locker and seeing his helmet all beat up and all the cuts and grooves on the front, because, see, those were warrior hits, man. That's what you wanted. You wanted good, deep divots into the helmet and scrape marks and other colors of teams, and it was just all over because he was a great player. And I stood there, and it was just a little, no big deal locker, and looked at it, and I said, you know what? I want to be here. I want to play at Alabama.
We had our banquet, and Bear Bryant flew down that day to sign him.
And my brother Bob had actually gone and picked up Bear Bryant at the airport. They flew into Pompano, which was, you know, a small town at the time. He had 2 or 3 bodyguards with him, a few state troopers, and I don't think Barry knew that Bear Bryant was coming into town that night. Well, we're at the banquet, and the next thing you know, the photographers, the television cameras all come flowing in behind, and there's Bear Bryant. And I think they exchanged some pleasantries there and did their pictures and so forth and so on, and then they went back to the house.
I remember coming home, and I'll never forget it. Since I've been back, I've walked up to my house, and I look at the door. When I opened the door, there was Coach Bryant standing in my house. That was really cool, yeah. So when I went in there, you know, he said, oh, I would like you to, go with the University of Alabama. I said, Coach, that's awesome. I was like, ah. And you got to understand, this man, I've never been around anyone else that had the aura, the feeling when you walked in a room of awe. I mean, just like you're just dumbstruck. You don't know what to say. You don't say anything. And for him to, ask me to sign a document, he put the papers in front of me. It was like there was no way I could say no. So it was like the commitment was there. So I signed the paper, and I remember my mom trying to take his hat. I said, Mom, don't do this. And she put it on her head, and she asked Coach Bryant, said, can I have this hat? And he said, he was very nice. He's always a gentleman. He said, no, ma'am, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, the NCAA would not appreciate me giving you anything. And I said, Mom, give him back the hat.
Oh, yeah, it was an extremely big deal. Because this is in the days before ESPN. I mean, you got one college football game on Saturday or 2. That was it. So, I mean, Alabama, Bryant was a legend. It was an extremely big deal.
Had no idea what I was getting myself into until my best friend, after I had committed, my best friend said, why do you want to go to Alabama? He goes, those guys are good. And I thought to myself, I said, well, I thought I was okay, I guess. And he said, well, I'll end up starting at Bucknell while you sit the bench at Alabama. Kind of hurt because he was my buddy. And I said, well, you know what? I'd rather sit the bench at Alabama than play at Bucknell.
In the summer of 1975, Krause boarded a train bound for Tuscaloosa, and upon arrival discovered what separated the Alabama football program from the rest.
When you walked into Alabama, there was this aura of winning. There was no question, there was no losing. There was all winning, we were gonna win. It was an atmosphere. It was all about an attitude in practice that there weren't excuses. And you had to go out there and pay the price. And numerous times I It was freshman year was just brutal. I mean, it really was brutal, and I really started second guessing my decision to go to Alabama because they were great football players. And I said, I think I bit off a little bit more than I could chew.
One of my favorite stories is with Coach Griska, that on a Sunday afternoon, we were freshmen, and we thought we were getting together for just a mini run, mini workout, so to speak, in shorts and T-shirts, and he proceeds to just run us until we're dragging. Our tongues are hanging out. I think we had a couple of guys throw up, and we thought, what do we do to deserve this? And we come into the locker room, and I remember sitting by Barry Krause, and Coach Griska puts his hands up on Barry's shoulder and he says, fellas, no need to call your mamas and daddies. We've got you right where we want you.
Clem was the head JV coach at the time, or the head freshman coach. But back then, you didn't really have just freshmen because you had a lot of junior varsity people, and you still played a junior varsity game. And we practiced all by ourselves over on one field, and the varsity was over here. And so the freshmen were kind of separated. So we were practicing, and Barry kept missing these assignments and missing them, and Coach Griska stopped practice, blew the whistle.
I called him up and I said, Barry, if you don't pick it up, I'm gonna put you on a surfboard out here on the Black Warrior River and send your fanny back down to Pompano Beach. And he got back in there, and from then on, he was 105%. He's afraid I'd put him on that surfboard.
Barry had a little different, I'd say, view of the world and everything. He was wide open all the time, you know, always ready to go. Frankly, always ready to hit somebody on the football field. But, you know, one of those guys that really built the character of that football team. I mean, just wide open, let's get it done, irregardless of the momentum during the game or whatever, let's get out there and make a play.
I mean, every guy on that team, on that defense almost, had a very dominant personality. There was maybe 2 or 3 that were go with the flow, but I think all of us had our own distinctive personality.
A lot of us didn't go home during the summer, which was a good sign that we respected and we loved one another. And there was competition within us. There would be nothing to be sitting around a table at 2 o'clock in the morning and say, hey, Barry, let's go run. And he'd go, what? And we'd go, yeah, we're gonna go run. And we would run, you know, through the campus, down on River Road, come back, it'd be 3 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go, wow, we just ran 5 miles. What did we do that for? Nothing else to do. But we challenged one another.
Marty and I were inseparable. He was a Florida boy out of St. Pete. I was out of Pompano, and we roomed the first year, and we did a lot of crazy things together, which I can't tell you most of them, but we had all of our classes together. We were in elementary ed. You know, can you imagine us teaching little kids? We would go out and enjoy ourselves, and the next morning it was ironic that it was like Marty was never with us. And it was always Barry Krause was, heard about you last night,
Before practice, you walked in there and somebody would have something written on the chalkboard about the weekend's festivities or the night before's festivities or something like that. And I think that was, you know, it was neat that we had I think that kind of shows the camaraderie that you could play a complete idiot and it would be completely publicized, but it never caused any problem.
I was speaking with Jack Rutledge one day, and Coach Rutledge also ran the dorm, but he said, you guys were kind of crazy, you were kind of wild, but you were kind of mavericks, but when you walked on that field, it was all business and you won. So we really couldn't say anything to you because you were winning. Now, if you just started losing, then it'd been a different story.
Blowing off steam at night was one way players could regroup from the grueling workouts they'd endured each day. Bryant's practice field was a place where the coach and his staff would weed out those who'd lay it on the line from those who wouldn't.
Coach Bryant would play all kinds of psychological games with you. And he wanted to find out and create through the tougher practices. He wanted to find out whether you're going to quit on him.
But it was a team-building effort because those of us, if your number was up, you were going to need some of your teammates propping you up and telling you take one more step and you can do this, because it was a very difficult experience.
It wasn't an individual type sport, it was a team sport, and that's what Coach Bryant taught us. It's about the whole and not the the part or the one. And that's what's so great about Coach Bryant is that you didn't have to, he wasn't going to put up with an individual thinking about himself. He was going to only tolerate, being team-oriented.
Leadership starts at the top. It starts with sacrifice. And from Coach Bryant to Coach Donahue to Bill Oliver and all the other assistant coaches that were on that defense. And then it filters down to the players.
Every day at the end of practice, everybody would go in, and the defensive line would stay out. And we would do goalpost jumps, we would do push-ups, we would do sit-ups, we would do 5-yard sprints, we would do 10-yard sprints, and then we'd take 4 laps around everything, all the fields that were out there. And this was the extra conditioning that Coach Donahue wanted his defensive linemen to have. He wanted his defensive line to outlast anybody. And I think that's why the coaches always had us put up 4 fingers at the end of the game. Because if you can win the fourth quarter, 90% of the time you can win the games.
It was an amazing thing that they did down there, because when you got down there, they instilled in you that you're Alabama and you're not supposed to lose. So it was, I wouldn't call it a brainwashing situation, but it was more that they established a pride in wearing that red shirt. And so you felt it. And so every day you went to practice, you wanted to improve and get better and get better.
Every single one of us was inspired to do our very best because we knew their expectations. And, I may not have been the biggest and the fastest, but I thought I was just as good as anybody else there on that football field. And Coach Bryant did that to you.
What most people don't realize, Coach Bryant decided who played and when they played. And that was his power. Coach Moore would call the plays, Coach Donahue would call the defense. Coach Bryant would decide who played. Now, he'd decide when we went for 2 or, kicking extra points, when we punted, stuff like that, but he decided who played.
One of the great things about Coach Bryant, when you played at Alabama, you got a chance to play and played the second teams in the heat of the game, just like you played the first teams in the heat of the game.
And that's why the tradition continued to go from one year to the next year to the next year, because the young kids always had the experience of playing in these big games. They didn't have to wait till they were good enough. They didn't have to wait till they were starters. Coach Bryant always said, you know what, if you're good enough to play, I'll give you the opportunity. For a lot of players, he gave us the opportunity at an early age.
As you went through University of Alabama, we needed discipline, we needed focus, and we needed a father figure away from our dads. And a lot of guys didn't have the dads or that kind of male person in their lives, and Coach Bryant was that man.
Despite a misstep in Week 2 against powerful Nebraska, the Tide was dominant in 1977 with an 11-1 record, including a Sugar Bowl demolition of 8th-ranked Ohio State. But artful maneuvering by the Poles left Alabama on the outside looking in, and the Tide entered 1978 with much to prove.
As a freshman, you grow a little bit. Sophomore, you grow a little bit. Junior, you came into your own. And the senior year, after we got we got disrespected on a national championship game that when we beat Ohio State 36-6, we were ranked 3rd in the country going into it. Number 1, number 2 lost. We were 11-1. We had lost early in the year to Nebraska. We felt that we should be the national champions, and we weren't.
What happened was Notre Dame began to play Texas, and they were 5th, and they let Notre Dame jump from 5th to 1st, where we went from 3rd to 2nd.
They had leapfrogged us from number 5 to number 1, unprecedented. Didn't even share it with us. It was like we weren't even there. And we thought that was unfair. So we went in the 78 season saying, we're a better football team than, we deserve to win a national championship, but we need to make it happen.
And we all wanted a piece of the rock. And I remember Coach Oliver calling it the piece of the rock. And first time I heard it, I said, what? And they said, we're talking about national championship. And in 1978, we could all taste it.
I don't know that people can appreciate how hard we worked. I don't know that, our days were pretty organized. We had about 2 weeks off, and that was from January 1st after the bowl game until we came back from school.
When we started practice, Coach Bryant would tell us, beginning the season, when he'd first have us all into the first meeting for the year, he'd say, guys, you're here to get ready to win a national championship. He goes, now the guys across the state are down there practicing, and their goal is to try to win the SEC. He said, we own the SEC. That's ours. That's yours by right.
I remember him telling me that we win national championships in January, February, and March in the lower gym. He said, I've never won a championship on January 1st. And he's right.
The off season, I never worked harder in my life than how we worked at Alabama. And that's why when we fast forward to the goal line stand, we knew they wouldn't score because nobody in our minds worked harder than we did.
I think we're going into the 78 season, we had a great deal of confidence in each other. We knew how each other played. We could feel each other really well.
Number one, the 78 team had great offensive talent. We were a very good offensive football team. The other team had the ball fewer snaps probably than any team in college football history.
You know, we could stay in a game because of our defense, because of the kicking game, and eventually we'd get them. You know, it was that kind of approach. We probably threw the ball more than any wishbone team in the country, simply out of necessity, but we could run the triple option and give people problems with it.
I much rather would have played against any defense I played against, except maybe Penn State that year, than our defense. I mean, we by far had the best defense.
I can remember Coach Bryant, he always somehow would let him be known. He said, defense, defense. Defense wins games. Offense sells tickets. And they believed that. He'd put that out, every 2 or 3 weeks or something. Defense, defense. If they don't score, they can't beat us.
Our toughest time was Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because normally we would scrimmage and a lot of times we would go against the first string defense. And so we would look forward to Saturday because whoever we were playing, we knew that their defense was nowhere near as tough as ours.
We felt confident, but you were still scared, you know, and unsure in some ways, you know, because you were playing Penn State, you're playing Ohio State, or you're playing Nebraska, Southern Cal, or Tennessee, or Auburn. You know, they're all good, with no question.
If you look at the schedule that we played, the Nebraskas, when Nebraska was a powerhouse, USC, when they were vying for the championship with us, the SEC schedule, Missouri, when they had, you know, Kellen Winslow and Gary Ellis and those guys, and Washington, out in Washington when they were, you know, had 22 returning starters. I mean, we played some powerhouse teams.
I know we had a disappointing loss early in the season to USC in Birmingham. But you know what, you lost early, you could rebound.
And I can just remember that game thinking this is USC, but there is no enthusiasm. Everybody's just, it was just one of those days that the stands were quiet, everything was quiet, and it was just a very strange feeling. And, you know, we just had an off day.
And it was tough losing that particular game, and we didn't want that feeling anymore. I think we made a pact. Everybody said, listen, guys, we don't want this feeling anymore. We can win the rest of our particular games, and we did that. And it was just great pulling together. If we had any downfalls, we corrected those downfalls at halftime or in the third quarter, and we really pulled together because we were a team.
We felt that if we started playing Alabama football, we started playing consistent football, we could build ourselves back and give ourselves an opportunity. That's all you could do, is give yourself an opportunity.
We came back to work on that Monday afternoon after losing to Southern Cal. Coach Bryant didn't throw a fit, didn't holler and scream like you would have thought. And we went back to work, basically, and worked harder and harder and harder, and then things fell into place for us to play Penn State in the national championship.
Alabama would close out the 78 regular season with 8 straight wins, ranked number 2 in both polls. Alabama hoped for a Sugar Bowl matchup to decide the national title. According to legend, Bryant placed a call to Penn State coach Joe Paterno and got his wish.
Penn State was on a 19-game win streak, the only undefeated team in the country. And we had one loss coming in. And you know, so many times you love to see that big matchup between the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country, and we had the opportunity to do that.
Every single night during that period of time between when we knew we were playing Penn State and when the actual game actually took place, we had meetings with Coach Donahue, and he would give us a defense. He would give us a defensive front. The linebackers, Ricky, Rich, or Barry, would call out the defense, and then Coach Donahue would say, well, what are you going to do? And every single player in the front seven would have to say what they're going to do. Coach, if the tight end's to my side, I'm going to go inside. So you could almost see it in your sleep.
Every time that we had a chance, we were looking at film. And for me, it was just another way to prepare and certainly realize that the people I were playing against was the same size and same age. This guy was a little bit bigger, this guy was a little bit faster. This guy right here is probably going to be a pro athlete. You have to watch him. I knew their mannerisms of coming off the ball, what they were doing in the pass.
Always felt that we were going to win. Never even thought about losing, but we knew that this was probably, or it was, the best team we played all year by far. Man to man, they were better than we were man to man. But as a team, we were better. And we knew that we were going to be in a fight, and we had to execute, not make any stupid mental errors, and hold on to the football.
Here it is, and here's the kick. It's a long, deep kick. Ogilvy waiting for it at the 3-yard line. Has it up to the 5, to the 10, to the near sidelines, to the 15, to the 20. He's out of bounds at the 21-yard line.
When we ran the first series of plays, I don't think we made a first down. But when the offense came off the field and I walk over where they're seated to talk through a couple of things with them, the look in their eyes and their face, I knew we were in for a long night. They were almost in shock.
I actually remember one play where they handed me the ball to the right side over Jim Bunch, and the hole kind of opens up and I start into the hole, and I'm seeing daylight, and I'm thinking I'm going to have a 10-yard gain, and all of a sudden I just kind of stop for some reason, and I'm trying to run, and I get lifted up, and I end up 5 yards in the backfield. And if you watch the replay, I'm going by Bruce Clark, and he just reaches around, I think maybe Jim, and grabs me around the waist and just picks me up. Now I weigh 250 and throws me into the backfield.
Matt Millen and Bruce Clark, outstanding defensive linemen. I think they were in our backfield more than our running backs were. I mean, they were getting back there, making plays, and our offense was just grinding it out.
The main thing I remember is that I played 2 plays and had -8 yards. They had Millen and Clark, which were 2 All-American tackles. We couldn't block them. They moved across that line so fast, I couldn't even hardly get the ball in the fullback's stomach, to make the ride. And, they were just that good.
And we were fortunate that we were able to slow down their quarterback, who was Chuck Facina. But again, that credit goes back not only, I guess, to the athletes, but it should go back to Coach Donahue and Coach Oliver, Bill Oliver. They came up with a game plan that was just marvelous.
We really blitzed them an awful lot that particular day. And it's hard to live by the blitz. A lot of things can happen, particularly when you're playing a 3-deep man-to-man, because one corner's got to play the man-to-man over the whole field. And, we played a ton of it, 3-deep man-to-man, which speaks well for our kids that played.
I remember having a couple of nice tackles, just dream tackles, where you hit the guy right in the middle of his chest and you drive him backwards and you put him on the ground. And they got right up. And kind of surprised you because, that was as hard as I could hit you, and you bounced up like that. Okay, we're in for a game now. So.
Win or lose that game, I mean, we had after the first quarter, we had a lot of respect for those guys. I mean, we realized that, these guys, they must go through the same thing we go through.
Alabama discovered it could move the ball with a steady dose of the run and an occasional pass. Behind a line anchored by all SEC performers Dwight Stevenson and Jim Bunch, Tony Nathan managed 127 yards on the ground. Neither team would score in the first quarter, but a 30-yard strike from Jeff Rutledge to Bruce Bolton would put Alabama on the board with seconds remaining in the half. Alabama's defense had held Penn State to only 21 yards in the first half, and as the two teams broke for their locker rooms, the Crimson Tide led 7-0.
We knew that we should be very thankful to be ahead. Coach Bryant was really excited. He talked about the fact that we were playing a good game. He was pleased with both the way the offense was playing and the defense was playing it.
I know that he came in and he said, we're doing just what we're supposed to do. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep pressing the quarterback. Keep executing on offense. Control the ball. We got to make more first downs. We got to give our defensive rest. And it was more, he came at that point and he joined you instead of trying to direct you. And it was more of, all right, we're here, you can control it, now let's go out and play in Alabama's second half.
Penn State made key adjustments on defense and would allow Alabama only 85 yards in the second half. The Lions intercepted a Rutledge pass in the third quarter. Penn State quarterback Chuck Fusina found Scott Fitzke for the score. The extra point would tie the game at 7. Alabama would respond 2 series later. Lou Eichner took a punt at his own 23 and raced 62 yards downfield. Major Ogilvy scored 3 plays later on an option to the left side. The Tide led 14-7.
There was a play that I felt like I felt pretty bad about was when Penn State scored their touchdown. They had taken their wide receiver, Fitzke, and moved him into a tight end position instead of a wide receiver.
They lined up at tight end and scored a touchdown on us. I was out on the edge. I didn't see that, but I know that they probably caught us off guard on that particular situation.
Then usually as a linebacker, when they release, at least, ding them, reroute them, slow them down, because all the, passing patterns have timing involved in it. So if you can slow them down a little bit, then the timing's all off. But I just didn't even see him, and he ran right on by. Not that it was my guy, we're in a zone defense, but he ran right down the middle of the field and scores their touchdown. So now it's 14-7.
Fusina with a snap. Back 3, 4, 5 steps, throws into the end zone and out of the end zone. No, it's a touchdown. It's a touchdown. Scott Fitzke made the catch.
Early in the fourth quarter, Penn State regained the momentum. The Lions took over on their own 30 and moved the ball downfield to the Alabama 34. On the 8th play of the drive, Fusina threw deep, but Don McNeil was waiting, intercepting the pass in the end zone and giving the Crimson Tide offense new life. It wouldn't last long. 3 plays later, the Lions pounced, disrupting a Rutledge pitch and recovering the ball at the Crimson Tide 19. A battle-worn Alabama defense returned to the field. 8 minutes remaining and a national championship on the line.
I got focused. I mean, we all did, and mostly when this happened, because this was like, we've got to tighten up. All of a sudden now the game has changed totally.
Our mindset was, okay, the offense have made a mistake. That's okay, but they don't have to score. They might get 3 points, but they will not get 7 points.
Sometimes the fear of failure is a great motivator. Imagine how you would feel working this whole year and then this one Saturday, giving it up on this one Saturday. That kind of a mindset.
Fullback Matt Suey ripped through the middle for 11 on first down. Jim Bob Harris and Murray Legg finally bringing him to a stop at the 8. Defensive lineman Warren Lyles was injured on the play. David Hanna, recovering from a knee injury, replaced him in the lineup. Mike Gooman managed 2 on the next play. And another Alabama injury, this time Ricky Gilliland, who was replaced by Rich Wingo. On 2nd down and 6, Fusina rolled right and tossed to Fitzke at the 2, setting the stage for one of the great solo tackles in Alabama football history by Don McNeil.
The play that Don McNeil made coming out of nowhere on Scott Fitzke, who had moved to tight end and then took a wide out put outside. Fitzke was a little bitty wide receiver. And Murray Legg fell down playing man-to-man on Fitzke in the flat.
The only times that they ever came out in this formation that I saw, they crossed the tight ends, but they had this little guy lined up at tight end so he could kind of slip through, and they'd try to pick you off, and they would throw it to him crossing. So I was going to be, the real smart player, and I was going to outsmart him. So when I lined up, I looked out to McNeil, and I gave him a hand signal, which meant you've got your man man-to-man. There's going to be no changing. If my man comes out, yours comes in, we'll kind of play zone, and you take this one, I'll take that one. I said, you got it.
It all comes back to you, what your coaches ask you to do. You go over it in practice. They tell you, Don McNeil, hey, listen, do what you're supposed to do before you can help anybody else. And that was going through my mind. I got to cover my guy. I got to run low. I got to make sure this guy's covered.
And I could see it in my head. They're going to run a crossing pattern. I'm not going to get picked off. I'm going to step in front of it and run 99 yards for a touchdown. I'd already seen it in my head, touchdown. Snap of the ball, instead of going across, this guy goes whoosh, straight out to the sidelines. Well, in my alignment, I lined up a yard inside so I could be in front of him. So just from the pure snap of the ball and him taking off sideways, I couldn't catch him.
At the corner of my eye, I saw the ball being thrown. So I just reacted and went, and the ball was being thrown to Scott Fitzke, and I just made a play. I had to make the perfect tackle, drive him out of bounds.
Because when he hit him, the guy, all he had to do is kind of spin around. All he's got to do is break the plane. Don McNeil made a form tackle, drove him right on out of bounds, parallel to the goal line. I was like, wow.
I remember Curtis McGriff. He was saying, McNeil, that was a great play. That was a great play, but I didn't know that. I was just playing football, like I was always taught to just play football. And that was a key play in that particular game.
State has a second down goal to go from the Alabama 6-yard line. Up to the line of scrimmage they come in. Here's the snap, and Busino rolling to the right. Looks, he throws at the goal line. Fiske got it. He is hit at the 1-yard line and driven out of bounds. Scott Fiske, leaning back, made the catch, then was hit by Don McNeil and driven out just short of scoring the touchdown.
Third down, Penn State ball at the 1. Timeout is called by the game official due to excessive crowd noise. When play resumed, Suey took the handoff up the middle and looked for room over the top, but there was none to be found. A powerful surge by Marty Lyons and Byron Braggs allowed Wingo, Hanna, and Curtis McGriff to make the stop just inside the 1.
On third down, that's kind of where it got real intense in the huddle, because when you're looking at the tip of the football and it's about 6 to 12 inches away from the goal line, you kind of get serious.
You don't think about national TV. You don't think about the 76,000 people that were there. You think about what's going to happen between you and that offensive lineman, and there's a space that far. This is everything that you've trained for.
But David Hanna had made a great play on third down. He actually was hitting Matt Suey's legs as he was trying to jump, so he couldn't get the full jump up.
The definition of a defensive lineman at Alabama was to take out interference and let the linebackers make the play. But they were also taught to penetrate. Ken Donahue is our defensive coordinator, and he constantly worked on these guys to get lower than the offensive linemen and reestablish the line of scrimmage on their side, not on our side, or else, linebackers can't do their thing.
I was really close to the ball, and I felt like I got off the ball probably as quicker than the offensive line did. And I don't know what happened. I guess because I had been an offensive lineman and my brother John being an offensive lineman, he had taught me a lot of techniques, and I had kind of learned how to be able to dip a shoulder and come up to get past the down lineman who was trying to prevent me from getting up to a linebacker, and that's pretty much the technique I used. I kind of just did what my brother John taught me, and I dipped her shoulder real hard and pretty much hit the running back in the stomach.
We had 2 inside linebackers. We had a goal line defense, and my key was the fullback. He came to Barry's side, and Barry hit the fullback, and so that means I had the tackle. And, they went over the top, and I hit him on the third down, and David Hanna had hit him low. And so we stopped him on the third down play.
Now Busino brings his team back up to the line of scrimmage. He has a double wing, a tight double wing in there, and he hands it off, and diving over, he did not make it, is Matt Suey, right at the 1-yard line. The Alabama team stood up and held him back. They throw him back. He's at the half-yard line.
Facing fourth down against the nation's #1 defense, Paterno called timeout to consider his options.
Prior to the play, I remember we were looking at about that far, 10 inches. Chuck Vicino said to me, "What do you think?" I said, jokingly, "I think you better throw the ball." And who would think that 30 years later that I think you should throw the ball had some meaning? But if Coach Donahue does not call that defense, I don't know if we stop him.
We gambled with our corners by bringing them right off the tight ends behind, real shallow, and didn't have anybody covering the tight end. We gambled and called it gamble man coverage.
And we knew that Coach Paterno was from the old school like Coach Bryant, and that when they're this far from the goal line, the mindset was, if we can't stick it in the goal line and score from this far, then we don't deserve it.
Defensive tackles, we were going to pinch down. We were going to line up, head up on the tackles right before the snap, move inside eye. At the snap, we were going to submarine inside. Try to create a pile. If you can create a pile, then the only way for the guy to score is to come up over the top.
It was a gutsy defense, I'll tell you, because if they would have bounced outside, we'd have been exposed. If they could have gotten outside that corner pinching, I think they would have scored. But they thought they could whip us up front.
We got in the huddle, and we were all kind of looking around. It was kind of quiet. And I remember Murray Legg spoke up and he said, hey guys, he said, this is what Coach Bryant talked about. It's gut check time.
Murray was the leader. Murray was the one yelling gut check, gut check, gut check. Nobody knew what gut check meant. All Murray was saying was, hey, you know what? We got to all be on the same page. This play could win the game.
Nobody has ever worked harder than us, and we believe that. And I'm sure other schools worked this hard, but in our minds they did. And this is what we've practiced for in that 100-degree heat in Tuscaloosa in August. This is what we sweated for, puked for. This is the culmination of everything we've done our whole lives to get to this point. This is it. And it's definitely a gut check time.
So as Murray's yelling gut check, Murray's yelling gut check, the play's called, the huddle breaks. I walk over to Barry. I said, Barry, they're coming over the top. They got to be coming over the top. I said, just take a step back, and as soon as the ball is snapped, just come over the top.
What surprised me was they ran a running play. It was actually the same running play they ran on third down. But this time they had flipped the tight end, so instead of me taking on the lead blocker and letting Wingo make the hit, Wingo takes on the lead blocker, takes him out, which was Matsui, and then the jumper, which was Mike Gooman, came the opposite, kind of came over my side. So it became, all of a sudden, I had to fill.
They ran a little bit more to my right than they had the previous play, and I remember coming through there, and he wasn't in front of me, but I remember hitting him with my hand.
Mike Clements came in from the corner, and as Gooman tried to jump, Clements kind of hit him low to where he couldn't get his full force and his full jump.
As soon as that ball was even moving, I was taking off right off the edge. So it was a good call on their part. It made me look, somewhat in the play, but it was just the fact that I didn't want to mess that play up and not do my job, just like everybody else was supposed to do their job.
Well, my view was they ran to the other side. So I made it through. I submarined through, and I turned my head. And as I turned my head, you could see Gooman going up, saw the penetration by David Hanna, saw Barry coming over.
And so I just met him. I just hit him at the top of the pile. I mean, that's just what we were conditioned to do. And I knew I had hit him good, but I didn't know how good I hit him. And see, I never tackled with my shoulders. I tackled my face, as you probably could tell, but I faced up everything. So when I hit him, I faced him face to face, slammed into him, made the hit. And when I did, I pinched a nerve in my neck, and it paralyzed me. And that instant that I hit him, it just buckled me. And within this whatever tenths of seconds, I didn't know whether we stopped him or not, because when I hit him, I held on as much as I can, and that's when Murray Legg, our defensive back, came in and hit me and hit him. And I remember pushing him back. We all went over, but I laid on the turf, and I was hurting.
He was laying there, and we're all going, back up, give him some room. Oh no, and he was just resting.
In the Sugar Bowl, shows a half a yard to go for the touchdown and the possibility of tying or going ahead for Penn State. 19-game win streak, only undefeated team in the country, ranked number 1 in the nation. Alabama ranked number 2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard. Bowman, he didn't make it. Tremendous goal line effort by Alabama. Turns Penn State away from a half a yard. An Alabama man is down on the field. I can't be definite that it looks like it might be Barry Krause. I think he just kind of got caught in the crush underneath.
The hit that he gave on Mike Gooman and the pressure that he put on his back, he was laying there on the ground, and I was waiting for him to get up. I waited and waited and waited, and when he got up, I picked him up, I put my arm around him and said, we did it. We did it.
Curtis McGriff and Marty and those guys that were down in the trenches, they won the game. David Hanna, they're the guys that won it. I know that McNeil and sometimes myself and Barry get the credit, but let me tell you something. The game is won and lost right there on that chalk. And then those guys won it.
People remember, oh yeah, Barry Krause's big hit. Well, it wasn't about that. I was just doing my job just like everybody else was. It's the epitome of what Alabama football was, in the fact that it was all about teamwork. We all came together at the right place at the right time in the arena that you just dream about. It was for a national championship.
Everybody forgets that even though we had the goal line stand, everybody forgets that we threw up 14 points offensively. Everybody forgets that our offense ran for 220 yards. If they don't run for 220 yards, if Tony Nathan doesn't run for 120 yards, Bruce Bolton doesn't catch the touchdown pass, we don't win. We don't win. So a lot of credit should go to the offense, the special teams, and everybody involved in that team, that game, and that year.
Only 6 minutes remained. The Crimson Tide offense, backed up to its own end zone, managed only a few yards on its next series. An Alabama punt fell short at its own 30, but a crucial error by Penn State, 12 men on the field, gave the Tide offense a fresh set of downs. Alabama ran more time off the clock than punted deep into Penn State territory. With 12 seconds remaining, Mike Clements intercepted a Fusina pass, and the ball game and a national championship once again belonged to Alabama and its legendary coach. Following the game, Barry Krause was named Sugar Bowl MVP.
I know Coach Bryant is proud of you. I know your teammates are proud of you, and the Sugar Bowl is very proud of you. Congratulations to you.
Thank you very much. Can I say something?
Okay.
I tell you, I thank God for the ability He gave me. Most of our defense, man, they played hell game. And it's a great feeling just to be able to play for Coach Bryant and to be a part of Alabama. Thank you. Thank you.
That play changed not only, I know, the other players' lives, but it changed mine incredibly, because I truly believe that play, because it was being watched by the owner of the Baltimore Colts named Bob Irsay, he drafted me number one pick because of that play. He saw me make that play. So it propelled me into the NFL as a number one draft pick. I mean, what an impact. I mean, that one moment that you dream about, it happened.
To be able to fulfill that dream was incredible. It was, I've been able to accomplish and do things that probably a million guys would love to be able to do. I was able, we won a state championship, we won a conference championship, we won a national championship. I can't, from an athletic perspective, I can't gripe about it at all. I've been very fortunate.
I didn't have any idea it was going to be this big of a deal. And we lived in Green Bay for a couple of years, and we came home one time to Tuscaloosa, and there was these paintings and all this. And what has happened? What is all this? I had no idea. But anyways, good memories. It was a real honor to be a part of that team.
Playing for Coach Bear Bryant, that was the ultimate. And then playing for the University of Alabama, then playing for the state of Alabama was great. I had a great time. I had a ball playing for Coach Bear Bryant and those coaches, and there's nothing better than playing for the University of Alabama.
And I sit here 30 years later saying that, you know what? If we hadn't stopped them and we don't win the national championship that day, those 4 years playing here with the people that I played with and the teammates that I had, better than the 12 years I played in the NFL, without a doubt.
But when I think about the decision to go to Alabama, you make choices in your life. And when I look back on that decision, it was a great decision. I couldn't have made, couldn't have picked a better team, better program, and to be remembered as part of probably one of the greatest plays in Alabama history. It's just a thrill. It's just a thrill, and it's an honor.
The yard marker in the Sugar Bowl shows a half a yard to go for the touchdown and the possibility of tying or going ahead for Penn State. 19-game win streak, only undefeated team in the country, ranked number 1 in the nation. Alabama ranked number 2. Everything could be hanging on 4th and goal with a half a yard. Booman. By Alabama turns Penn State away from a half a yard. An Alabama man is down on the field. I can't be definite that it looks like it might be Barry Krause. I think he just kind of got caught in the crush underneath. It could have been him who came over the top to freeze the lunge of Duman, because Mike was trying to go over the top. Wingo and Krause and Hamilton and Lyon all sort of stood up, and they stopped him short. So it is Barry Krause who is taking him down on the field right now.
Keith, Paterno went by formation on that last call, took the ball deep in the backfield, as you said, to allow Duman to jump. But what happens on the goal line defense, the linemen are penetrating the linebackers. Let's stop it. Let's see it right here. The linebacker Krause, number 77, has got to make the tackle on the back diving across the goal line. Sensational play. It maybe prevented Penn State from winning the national championship.